You may not have the budget to go with one of those expensive high-quality prime lenses, but did you know you could still get some sharp photos with the current lens you have just by following some of the tips I'm going to discuss in this video? So without any further ado, let's start this tutorial and I'll show you 6 tips to take sharper photos with any lens. Lighting is the most important factor which affects the sharpness of your photos dramatically. A bad quality light source can make a photo taken with a $2,000 lens look like garbage. Some high quality light sources which you should consider using are studio flashes, speed lights, daylight, direct sunlight, and some lights like this continuous light which I'm using for this video. And some bad quality light sources which you should avoid using are your house's ceiling lights, street lights, and anywhere else which there is not enough light you can use for your photos. It will ruin the sharpness of your photos. Now let me show you an example. I took both of these photos with my Sony FE 50mm 1.8 lens, which a lot of people do not consider it a sharp lens and they hate it. But look at the difference. One photo was taken with this studio flash and the other one was taken with the house ceiling lights. Look at the difference in the sharpness. You know why? A studio flasher's lights travel in a high speed and they make the photos look really crisp and sharp. But the frequency of the ceiling lights and the street lights are not the same as the studio flashes and they do not travel at the same speed. And that's why the studio flashes make the photos look really sharp and crisp. The second important factor which affects the sharpness of your photos is aperture. As you know, if you increase your f-number, you have a deeper depth of field, and if you decrease your f-number, you would have a shallower depth of field and a more blurry background. But the important thing to know is that not all lenses take the sharpest photos in their lowest f-number. For example, most Nifty 50 lenses do not take sharp photos at f1.8, and they start to produce better results at f2.2, 2.5 and upper. You can find the sharpest f-stop of your lens by searching on the internet. And I also took this photo with f2.2 instead of f1.8. The next important factor is shutter speed. As you might know, when you are taking photos handheld, there is a rule called rule of thumb for shutter speed. The rule of thumb says that your shutter speed should match or exceed the focal length of your lens. For example, if you are using a 50mm lens on a full frame camera, your shutter speed should not go lower than 1/50th of a second. And to be more confident, I would go with 1/100th of a second and more, to be sure that my photos would not have any blurriness from the movement of my hands. And if you are using a crop sensor camera, you should multiply your focal length by 1.5. For example, if the lens is 50mm, you should multiply it by 1.5, which it becomes 75, and you should not go lower than that in your shutter speed. For example, it's better to use a shutter speed of minimum 1/100th of a second and more. And one important thing to mention before I go to the next tip is that there are many other rules for shutter speed which you should consider. For example, if your subject is a person which is running really fast, you should use a much higher shutter speed like 1/1000th of a second and more. But this was not the case for this tip because this tip was related to rule of thumb and the minimum shutter speed you should use to avoid getting blurriness from the shakiness of your hand. The next important factor is choosing the right focusing mode. If your camera has the IAF technology, it's really good news, cause it will automatically track the eye of the subject. But if you do not have this option, don't worry. You should use the focusing mode which is called one point AF, single point AF, or single spot AF. It has different names in different camera brands. And after that you have selected your single point AF, you put that single point on the closest eye of the subject to the camera. The next factor is camera's ISO. As far as you can, try to stick with the lowest value of ISO, which is ISO 100 in many cameras, and also some cameras which go to minimum of ISO 50, so you get the most clean and sharp photos. And the last important tip is in the post-processing. You could use some of the features of Adobe Photoshop like a Smart Sharpen to take the sharpness of your photos to another level. Like you see in this photo, I used the Smart Sharpen to make the sharpness of my subject's eye more and more, and it became so much sharper. I promise that by using these 6 tips which I mentioned in this video, you would get much sharper photos with any lens you have. Just go out and test them yourself and see the results. And one bonus tip before I wrap up this video, please do not use cheap UV filters on your lens, because it would destroy the sharpness of your photos. I really hope this video was useful for you and you learned something new. Please do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you do not miss any of my upcoming videos in the future. Have a great day, guys!